Quran's edge had once been the Federation's dream-gleaning domes, thriving vertical farms, children laughing on solar-paneled streets. That dream had died quietly, drowned beneath acid rains and bureaucratic silence. Now the place existed, as a skeleton of its former self-wet concrete, fractured glass, and the dull perfume of corroding alloy. The wind had a permanent voice here. It whispered through the open joints of forgotten buildings and rattled broken conduits like dry bones in a ruined rib cage. 42 stories above the ghost of Sector 14H. Darien Meyer adjusted a mist valve with gloved hands and tapped a rusted panel until the irrigation pressure equalized. It was late, but the sun rarely mattered in a place like this. The greenhouse's filtered light ran on cycles, not celestial rhythm. Water hissed through clean lines. Roots swayed slightly in aeroponic. Mist beds. He exhaled. Silence. Predictable. Controlled. He didn't hear the knock. He felt it, a faint tremor through the structural plating beneath his boots. He froze. No scheduled maintenance. No patrols. No functioning lift. A second knock. Not mechanical. Not accidental. Someone had climbed the shaft. Darien moved calmly, but his pulse sharpened. He set down the nutrient tray, walked through the greenhouse arch, past his cot, past the unused second one he hadn't dismantled yet. At the security panel, he tapped the cracked display. Static greeted him. Then movement. 2 figures in the storm haze. One small, standing too still. One taller, arms half wrapped around her frame, like she wasn't cold, but bracing for rejection. He disengaged the lock. A loud clunk. The door hissed and slid open partway. Rain swept in, immediately cold, and smelling of old metal. The smaller figure stepped forward. A girl, maybe 7. Blue-skinned, soaked to the bone, hair plastered across her forehead. Her voice came soft but sharp. "My mother died today. Can I stay with you, human?" There was no tremble in her voice. No desperate sob. Just those words, measured, rehearsed, too calm to be true. Darien blinked once. Behind her, the taller woman stepped into clearer view. Older, blue-toned like the child, but paler, her skin catching faint green glints under the tower lights. She was beautiful in a weary, unadorned way, clothes torn. One shoulder bare, wrap skirt soaked and clinging to her legs. She didn't speak, but her eyes met his. Darien didn't ask for a name. He didn't question. He stepped aside. The girl entered first, barefoot, leaving water trails across the metal floor. The woman followed, silent, her gaze still on him as she passed. He closed the door behind them, sealed it manually, turned back. The girl was trembling. Now, as if her body had only just been told it was allowed to react. The woman wasn't. Her spine held straight, hands loose but ready. She watched everything, especially him. Darien pointed to the wash alcove. "Towels. Dry off." His voice cracked from misuse. The woman gave a small nod and nudged the girl. Gently. "Go," she said. They disappeared down the hall. He remained standing, the puddle near the entry already cooling. He didn't believe the girl's story. Not exactly. But the need in it, he recognized that. He had once spoken lies that felt like air. 15 minutes passed before the girl reappeared. She was wrapped in an oversized towel, knotted poorly at the waist. She sat near the vent, hands clenched in the cloth. Darien brought her a ceramic bowl of water and a handful of nutrient chips. She didn't thank him. She didn't look away either. "What's your name?" she asked. "Darien." She nodded. "Elia. No last name." No hesitation. Just truth, or what passed for it. Then the woman emerged, wearing one of his shirts, dark gray, oversized, clinging to her damp frame. Her hair was tied back with cloth. Her eyes met his. She said, Thank you. He pointed down the hall. Bed small, might need to share. We will, she replied. He turned away. Didn't ask what happened. Not yet. That night, as the rain ticked across the greenhouse glass, Ariane sat near the vent seals, adjusting airflow. Behind him, he could hear the girl's soft breathing, the woman's silence, and in that silence something changed. It wasn't loneliness anymore. It was the beginning of something else, not spoken, not understood, but real. Asterisk, the morning came not in brilliance, but in muted light filtered through fogged greenhouse panels. Rain had slowed to mist, clinging to the upper glass like breath on a mirror. Inside, the vents exhaled warmth in steady intervals, and the plants suspended in their gentle arcs of growth seemed to lean toward it. Half awake in the glow. Ariane hadn't slept much. He rarely did. 2 or 3 hours at most, enough to quiet the brain, not enough to dream. He sat now at the central relay terminal, staring at pH fluctuation graphs that meant little to him today. His mind was still caught in the hallway, the thin figure wrapped in a towel, and the silent woman who'd walked through his door like she belonged there. He heard movement. Not footsteps, fabric brushing against metal, a slow inhale. Then the soft creak of the cot frame. Ilya appeared first. Still in the same oversized towel, though she had cinched it tighter now. Her hair, dark and tangled, framed a face too calm, too measured for a child her age. She walked barefoot across the metal floor until she reached the heat vent again, then sat. Said nothing. Ariane stood without a word, crossed to the cooking unit. It was small, efficient, powered by the same solar converters that ran the greenhouse. He pulled open a ration drawer, selected one of the better packet starch rounds, and a small sealed vial of synthetic syrup. He heated the bread on the hot plate, added syrup, folded it, rehydrated a slice of root. Simple, warm. He placed it beside her on a ceramic plate. Sit by the vent. She did. She didn't thank him. She ate slowly, watching him the whole time. After 3 bites, she asked, "Are you alone here?" Ariane didn't look at her. Always. For a while. Why? He wiped the counter with a cloth. Thought, it's easier. Ilya looked down at her half-eaten breakfast. Her voice was almost a whisper. I don't think it is. Before he could answer, she glanced over her shoulder. Naren emerged from the hallway, barefoot as well, wearing the same shirt from the night before. She had tied the sleeves into makeshift cuffs at her forearms. Her hair was damp again, though this time more intentionally so, twisted into a looser knot behind her head. Her eyes scanned the room, not suspiciously, but assessing. She looked at Ilya. She slept through the night. Ariane nodded. That hasn't happened in weeks. Ilya didn't react, just kept chewing, slow and deliberate. Ariane gestured toward the far end of the greenhouse. I need to check the hydrosensors. Naren followed. They stood beside the vertical drip arrays, the water cycling in quiet rhythm. I owe you an explanation, she said. Ariane didn't interrupt. Ilya lied, Naren continued. Her mother isn't dead. Not exactly. We don't. No, she was taken. She kept her eyes forward, watching the moisture slide down a leaf. 3 weeks ago, during a transfer. Her mother was deemed tradable by the processors. Ilya wasn't on the registry yet. Too young. They were separated. Ariane's jaw clenched slightly. He didn't speak. Her mother thought it was temporary, Naren said. But they never let her see Ilya again. And Ilya? Someone told her, some bureaucrat or something worse. Your mother died in holding. That was it. 7 years old. Ariane exhaled through his nose, slow. And you? She ran, Naren said. Found me again. She remembered where I lived. I'd known them before. Not well, but enough to recognize her. She showed up on my door, bleeding from her foot, barefoot. Didn't cry, just said, "You're still alive. So now you're my mother." He turned to face her now. I didn't correct her, she said. She was already holding on to that story, like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Darien studied her expression. She didn't flinch. Didn't blink. "I'm not trying to deceive you," she said. "We didn't plan this. We just didn't have anywhere else to go." I remembered the tower from old maps, isolated, unmanned, unpatrolled. "They used to call you the ghost in the tower?" He smirked faintly. "I've heard worse." Naren looked down. "If you want us to leave?" I didn't say that. "You didn't say anything." "I don't say much." She met his gaze. "That going to change?" He didn't answer right away. Then quietly, "Maybe." They stood like that for a moment. Two people surrounded by dripping leaves and quiet breath. The world soft around them. Naren turned back toward the central room. "I'll clean up." He let her go, let the silence return. But it didn't settle the same way anymore. It felt ... heavier. Not in a bad way, just more occupied. It had weight now. Human weight. Later that afternoon, while Naren rinsed used cups and Alia sat cross-legged beside the heater drawing circles on synth sheet with a salvage stylus. Darien opened a drawer beneath the floor grate. Inside, sealed in a steel case, was the trace chip he had taken from Elia's boot, still dormant. But once alive, he didn't tell them. Not yet. The third morning arrived gently, without the sharpness of storm or the hiss of rain. For the first time in a week, Quran's edge was silent. No alarms from ruptured vents down in Sector 14H, no rattling of the wind through broken catwalks. Just pale gold light spreading across the greenhouse canopy and falling in soft shafts over the wet steel floor. Darien was already awake. He never really stopped being. He crouched beside the hydroponics array, damp fingers adjusting the nutrient drips beneath a leafy hybrid strand, bred to clean carbon faster than it consumed it. The machine hummed softly. His hands moved with mechanical precision, but his thoughts drifted to a girl too calm for 7. To a woman who moved like every step might be her last welcome. To the words, "My mother died today." He glanced toward the hallway. The door to the sleeping room stood slightly ajar. There was movement. Naren stepped out, barefoot, wrapped in one of his older thermal shirts that hung loosely around her frame. Her hair was unbound, falling in dark waves over her shoulders. She didn't see him at first. Her steps were quieter now, not the wary footsteps of someone ready to run. She paused near the kitchen basin, fingering the rim of a drying bowl. Darien stood. Not abruptly, just enough for her to notice. "I need to ask you something," he said. His voice wasn't sharp, but it wasn't softened either. She met his gaze without hesitation. "Ask, how did Elia get here? And what really happened to her mother?" Naren's jaw worked for a second before she spoke. "She was taken during processing. Her mother was flagged registered. Elia wasn't. Not yet. Too young. It should have been a temporary separation. But they never brought her back." Darien's brow furrowed. "And Elia was told that her mother died," Naren finished. "In holding. Point blank. A man told her like it was logistics. No comfort, no reason." He swallowed hard. 7. She believed it, because she had to. Because the alternative meant hoping. Darien lowered his gaze, thumb brushing a wet edge of the hydro tray. "And you?" "She found me 2 days later, bleeding. Alone." She didn't cry. Just said, "You're still alive. So now you're my mother." Naren's voice cracked then, just once. I didn't correct her. I couldn't. She'd already started building something with those words. He nodded slowly. "So when she said it to me, It wasn't new. No, Naren whispered. She says it when she's afraid. Ariane looked at her for a long time. And you let her? She needed someone. I didn't say no. Neither of them moved. The silence this time wasn't empty. It pressed down with truth, thick but clean. I'm not trying to replace anyone, she added. You're not. Darienne said. You're just ... staying. She didn't reply. Not with words. Just a slow breath and the tightening of her jaw. From the corridor, a small voice floated out. I heard you. Both adults turned. Elia stood in the doorway, blanket around her. Shoulders like a soft shell. Her hair a tumble of sleep. Her voice was level, not accusing. I know she's not dead, Elia said. But if I say she is, it doesn't hurt as much. Ariane's heart twisted. Naren stood frozen. Elia walked over and climbed into Naren's lap without looking up. I don't need a real mother, she murmured. I just need one who stays. Naren's arms wrapped around her like instinct. Tight, protective. Her breath. Hitched once, then steadied. Darien stepped back. Quietly, respectfully. He didn't need to say anything. He didn't need to be told his place. He already knew it now. You stayed, Elia said to him, her voice calm again. He nodded once. I don't think you'll go, she added. He crouched beside them, met her eyes. I won't, he said. This time, no one corrected him. Because it was true, the shift wasn't loud. It didn't announce itself with tears or embraces. But it was real. Like roots taking hold in soil that had been dead for far too long. That afternoon, while the greenhouse vents cycled warm mist and the filtered sunlight painted gold across the walls, Darienne moved the second cot into the side room, assembled it in silence. When Elia saw it, she didn't ask questions. She just looked at him, then down at the new blankets. Thank you, she whispered when he passed by. From behind, Naren's voice followed. He didn't have to. Darienne didn't turn around. He didn't answer, but he stayed. That was enough. Asterisk, the rain didn't return that night. Outside, the silence was so complete it felt unnatural, like the world itself was holding its breath. Inside the tower, everything had shifted again imperceptibly, like a slow settling of dust after something falls. The cot in the side room was now occupied. Elia had made it hers without ceremony. She lined up 3 smooth stones she'd found on the greenhouse floor along the edge. Darienne didn't ask why. Some rituals didn't need explaining. He sat near the greenhouse wall as dusk gathered, the soft hum of the hydro vents surrounding him. Across the room, Naren moved quietly through the kitchen alcove. She wore one of his older shirts again, but this time it was tied at the waist with a strip of cloth. It fit differently now, not because it had changed, but because she had. Her movements weren't cautious anymore. They had weight. Presence. She stood near the basin, sleeves rolled, washing a bowl he hadn't even realized he'd left there. Her hands moved steadily, fingertips pink from the warm water. Her jaw was relaxed, her shoulders low. The tension that had haunted her when she first stepped through the tower door had begun to melt. Slowly, like frost drawn to sun, Elia was curled near the vent again, blanket wrapped around her like armor. She was tracing gentle lines into a sheet of synth paper, not drawing anything recognizable, just circling one spot again and again, until it dimpled under the pressure. Why don't you wear boots? She asked without looking up. Darienne blinked, caught off guard. Inside? No, she said, ever. He leaned back on his hands. Because I trust the ground here. From across the room, Naren paused. Her eyes flicked up, just briefly. Elia didn't answer right away. Her stylus scratched faintly. My mom wore boots in bed sometimes. When she was scared. No one responded. Then softer, Elia added, Naren hasn't worn boots in 3 days. Naren looked down at her bare feet, not with surprise, but with a quiet realization. She didn't smile. But something in her spine eased. Later, while Alelia napped, Darien was working near the greenhouse fence when he heard movement behind him. Naren appeared, sleeves pushed up, hair falling in a loose, half-unraveled knot. Without speaking, she knelt beside him. He handed her a trowel. You sure? I've done worse jobs, she replied. They worked side by side, a rhythm forming. Between them, soil lifted, roots sorted, moisture checked. Naren didn't ask for guidance. She watched, learned, adjusted. For a while, there was only the quiet of work. Then Darien said, You look comfortable. She glanced at him. That makes you uncomfortable? No, he said, adjusting a drip nozzle. I just don't want to mistake survival for peace. I'm not surviving anymore, she said. Not yet, he corrected. But you're starting to live. That stilled her. She set down the trowel, wiped her arm across her forehead. I've never had a day without a plan, she said. Always a next step, a price, a lie. She extended one hand beneath the slow drip of a condensation tube, letting the water trace. Her knuckles. Today, I didn't prepare for anything. Darien's eyes followed the arc of water down her wrist. His gaze paused there. She noticed. Is that the first time you've looked at me? She asked. I've looked before. Not like that. No, he said. Not like that. He stood, moved to adjust a valve. His hands were steady. His breath WASN, single quotes T.NARE. Didn't tease, didn't follow. She just rose, brushed the soil from her thighs, and moved behind him. When she stopped, inches away, her voice was soft. I don't want to survive by being desired. But I want to know I still can be. Darien turned. She didn't step back. Their eyes met. No performance. Just quiet honesty. You are, he said, but not because you have to be. She nodded once, then passed behind him and returned to the kitchen. That night, Darien found Elia sitting by the window again. Her drawing pad lay beside her, abandoned. Her eyes were on the glass, where the stars shimmered faintly through the mist. He sat next to her. I think Naren's ready, she said. For what? Elia shrugged. To stop hiding in other people's stories. Darien watched her. And you? I never had a story, she replied. I just follow people into theirs. She turned her face to the skyline. But this place feels like one. Like a story where no one dies at the end. He looked at her. Is it the kind you want? No, she said. I want the kind where people stay. He placed a hand gently on her shoulder. She leaned into it, just slightly, before rising and walking back to the side room. She didn't say goodnight. She didn't need to. Darien turned off the greenhouse lights, leaving only the soft glow of the hallway lamp. As he passed the sleeping room, he saw Naren curled under the thermal blanket. She hadn't shut the door. All the way. Her eyes were open. He paused in the doorway. She didn't speak. He didn't enter. But when he walked away, she watched until he was gone. And for the first time, no one ran. Not him. Not her. Not the girl curled into quiet certainty nearby. The silence inside the tower wasn't empty anymore. It was home. Asterisk. The next morning opened with golden mist across the glass canopy. The kind of filtered sunlight that painted shadows on the floor and turned the greenhouse's foliage into stained glass silhouettes. The vents cycled slow and steady, exhaling warm air into the central chamber. The tower breathed like something alive, now no longer an artifact of ruin, but a place with rhythm. With pulse, Darien was already awake. He crouched near the water. Regulators, checking for hairline sediment cracks. But he wasn't really thinking about pipes. He was thinking about the chip, the trace tag he'd found embedded in Elia's boot. It had pinged 4 days before they arrived. Just once. Enough? To be dangerous. Enough to mean someone had tried. Asterisk. He hadn't told them. Not yet. From across the room. Elia stirred in her sleep, nestled in the blanket nest she'd chosen near the storage alcove and heating duct. She didn't call out. Didn't wake in fear. That had changed. In the wash station, Naren moved like someone who had nowhere to run. She wore another of his shirts, unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled above her elbows. No jacket, no belt, no boots. Her hair hung loose down her back, catching the morning light in thin silvered strands. She looked over her shoulder once. Caught him watching. She didn't look away. Instead, she dried her hands with a cloth and walked toward him. She moved slowly, not like prey, but like a person who had nothing to hide. She stopped close enough that her hip brushed his where he knelt. Darien stood, setting the cloth aside. Naren tilted her face toward his. Unreadable. You said I looked comfortable, she said. He nodded once. You do, but you didn't ask what that cost. He didn't speak. She looked past him for a moment. Then back. I gave myself to people who didn't ask just so they wouldn't hurt me in ways I couldn't predict. It worked. Sometimes. Her voice didn't shake, but her shoulders had pulled tighter again. That's not what this is, she added. This place, you, Alia. He took a slow breath. I know. She stepped closer, bare feet against bare floor. Her voice dropped. I'm not offering you anything, Darien. I'm asking. He stared at her. Steady. What are you asking? Do you want me? There was no shame in the words. Just clarity. Darien stepped forward, not rushed, not hesitant. He didn't grab her, didn't reach. He just came close enough for her to feel his warmth. I do, he said. She exhaled, not from relief but release. She reached for his chest, fingers brushing his shirt, stopping over his heart. And don't take me like I'm broken. I won't. She nodded, then rested her forehead against his collarbone. His hands rose, one to her back, the other to the nape of her neck. They stayed like that for a long moment, not kissing, not undressing, just being close, choosing each other. Later, they moved together not to the spare cot, but to the vent alcove where Alia usually slept. It was warmer there, more real somehow. They undressed slowly, carefully, each piece of fabric folded, not torn, each touch deliberate, not desperate. When they lay together, skin to skin, it was not performance. It was restoration. Naren guided. His hands where she wanted to be touched, not because she needed it, but because she chose it. Darien kissed her collarbone, then her neck, then lower, until her breath caught not from fear, but from being seen. The rhythm found them slowly, naturally. Her legs wrapped around his waist, drawing him closer, her hands pressing into his shoulders. He moved gently, like he was learning the contours of a language neither had ever spoken aloud. She pulled him deeper, matched him in every breath. Every shift, there were no sharp cries, no dramatics. Just the soft, living sounds of two people reconnecting the parts of themselves they thought were gone. When it was done, she didn't move away. She stayed curled against his chest, fingers spread over his sternum, her breath brushing his collarbone. My real name isn't Naren, she whispered. That name belonged to someone on a registry. Someone who was already sold before she had a chance to be anything else. Darien didn't ask the old name. This one suits you, he said. She closed her eyes. You're not going to ask why I ran? No, he said. You're not running now. And that was the end of it. He stayed awake long after she slept. her body warm against his, her palm still resting over his heart. He watched the greenhouse lights cycle down, heard Elia shift in her own corner of the room, then go still. The tower no longer echoed. It held. Tomorrow, he'd tell her about the chip, about the signal, about the truth of what might still be following them. But not tonight. Tonight was for silence, for warmth. For the woman who now slept with no boots, no walls, and no need to flee. They hadn't said forever out loud, but it had begun. 5 days passed. The rain never returned. Instead, the sun rose each morning like it was remembering how. The mist thinned. Light streamed through the greenhouse canopy, and for the first time in what felt like years, Darien could track shadow lines as they drifted across the floor. The tower didn't feel like shelter anymore. It felt like a home. Elia had begun calling the storage bay downstairs her room. She stacked small personal items inside salvaged cloth, a paper scrap she'd folded into a star, a sketch of the tower drawn in angular, childlike lines. She didn't ask permission. She just made it hers, instinctively, without fear. Darien noticed she no longer curled near the vent at night. She hadn't asked to sleep near them since. That morning, Naren stood at the basin, sleeves rolled again, rinsing clay from her arms after transplanting. She was barefoot, glowing slightly from the heat in the room, her hair unpinned and loose around her shoulders. The shirt she wore, one of Darien's, was unbuttoned halfway, and when she moved, the fabric swayed open in rhythm with her body. He watched her without shame now. She knew it. She didn't look away. She turned toward him and crossed the room. No hesitation. She stood in front of him, close, not tentative. Her hip brushed against his side. "I want you again," she said. The words were soft, but certain. Darien searched her face. Her voice wasn't shy, wasn't performative. It was present, grounded, a statement of now, not maybe later. "I want you," she repeated. "Now, here, as we are." He reached for her hand slowly, tracing the space between her fingers with his own. Then he kissed her, not hungrily, not in possession, but in promise. She kissed him back with equal calm. No rush, just want. They moved toward the greenhouse floor, where the day's warmth had gathered. She slid the shirt off her shoulders without ceremony, letting it fall beside the mat. She stood before him, bare in the sunlight, skin catching golden warmth, hips curved in quiet strength, stomach soft and unhidden. She didn't pose. She didn't flinch. She just was. Darien touched her gently jaw, collarbone, shoulder, hip as if rediscovering her with reverence. When they lay together again, it was without urgency. Their bodies fit now, not because they needed to, but because they chose to. Naren guided his hand once, slowly, where she wanted it, not with words, but with breath. When he entered her, she wrapped her arms around his back and pulled him close, holding him there. Their rhythm grew together, quiet, warm, patient. Each sound between them was low and unguarded. Her moans weren't muted. They were real, intimate. She whispered his name once, and this time he answered with a kiss to her lips, not asking permission, just saying, "I'm here." When it ended, they lay tangled in the sunlight, her leg draped over his hip, their skin still glowing. She didn't move. "You didn't just make love to me," she said after a long silence. "You gave me myself back." He pressed his lips to her temple. She pulled the blanket over both of them and closed her eyes. Later, while she rested, Darien retrieved a steel box from beneath the floor vent. Inside, the trace chip still sat, inert but whole. He stared at it for a long time, then stood, walked to the corner of the greenhouse where a tiny makeshift furnace sat, and dropped it into the flame knot. It glowed orange, then crumbled. That night, they burned another thing, Elia's old registry tag. She didn't cry. She watched it quietly, the numbers flaking away. When the flame faded, she turned to Darien and said, "Does that mean we're a real family now?" He crouched to meet her eyes. "I think we've been one for a while." She looked over his shoulder, toward Naren, who stood in the dim light. Watching, Elia tilted her head. "Can I call you something?" Darien nodded. "Anything you want." She took a breath. Then softly, without blinking, she said, "You're ours." Darien didn't speak. He just nodded and she walked to Naren, reached up and slipped her hand into the woman's. Naren didn't let go. That evening, Darien rearranged the central room, moved the bedrolls, cleared the crates, set down 3 cushions in a circle, not for utility, for living. Naren made real food. Spices, color, texture. Elia brought the cups. Darien poured the drink. They ate like it was normal. After, they leaned against the greenhouse wall. Stars shimmered faintly above them. The tower was still, the vents low. The hum of the water collector like a heartbeat. Nare, and leaned her head against his shoulder. "Tell me what you were before this." He thought for a long time. "I tracked soil drift. That's what they paid me for." "And what did you really do?" "I waited for someone to knock." She smiled. "A small one. Honest." Elia fell asleep in Naren's lap. Darien lifted her gently, carried her to her room. She stirred once, eyes barely open. "Don't leave," she murmured. "I won't," he whispered. "Ever." He returned to the central room. Naren reached for him. He sat. They didn't move. Again. Outside. The wind slowed. Inside. The tower remained sealed. Not as a hiding place, but as a home. Not temporary. Not survival. Just theirs. Forever. Together. The end.